Hello, this is the vocabulary video for the first part of the Manifest Destiny unit. Our targets for this unit are to analyze the factors that led to Western migration, and then to explain and evaluate the impact of Manifest Destiny on the nation. So society, politics, foreign and Native American relations. There's a lot there that we could cover. Here's what we're going to focus on. To start with, how did Manifest Destiny create conflicts? And how did it change the relationship between different groups of people in the United States? Our first word is free state. This is a noun. A state that did not allow slavery was called a free state. At the time of the Revolutionary War, there were 0 free states in the United States. Every state allowed slavery. Over the next 20 years, states in the North began to pass laws getting rid of slavery, so they began identifying themselves as free states. The opposite of that is a slave state. A state that did allow slavery was called a slave state. Until the Civil War, Southern states were slave states. Because there were fewer people living in the South, slave states were afraid that the U.S. Congress would pass laws forcing them to give up slavery. And the last word is annex. Annex can be either a verb or a noun. To annex land means to add more land to a city or country that already exists. So the pig wants to know if it can annex the duck pond to the pig pen. And the duck says, this is already mine. If a building already exists, an additional part can be annexed to the old building. More often, this is called an addition. Sometimes it's called an annex. Wichita started out as a small town and has annexed more land to grow into a city. This is not a map that shows you what the original city was. The original city would have been pretty small right down here. This does not even show the whole city of Wichita. That's just what I could fit on the slide. But you can see that the places that are kind of hatch marked in, those were places they were thinking about annexing or adding. I'm not sure they all got added to Wichita. I think some of them got added to other places, but those are annex, to add on land. So what do you think, based on the vocabulary word, based on our vocabulary words, what do you predict was the main source of conflict between the North and the South? So we have free state, slave state, and annex, which means to add. You'll find out as we go on. Let's take a look at a map that talks about the end of slavery. This becomes an important topic in our Manifest Destiny unit, as you may have guessed. So we have the North, and the South, and the West. And here they're shown basically in 3 different color ranges. The blue colors in the Northeast, what we call the North for the rest of this semester. The North started ending slavery before 1810. Now I say they started ending slavery because some of them passed laws that said if there's someone who's already enslaved, they continue being a slave until they die. But anyone who is born to an enslaved woman will not be a slave. And there will be no more slaves bought or sold in our state. No one can bring in a slave who is not already enslaved. So that's what I mean by beginning ending slavery. There was not a hard and final time that says, today is the end of slavery in a lot of the northeastern states. The green colors in the West ended slavery between 1820 and the 1860s. Down here in the Southwest, it kind of depended on which side they were listening to in the Civil War, whether they got rid of slavery before the Civil War was ended or not. But the rest of the darker green colors definitely ended slavery before the Civil War, or at the beginning of the Civil War. Yellows and reds, the South, they were forced to give up slavery during and after the Civil War. So there's various times here, but they all were forced to give up slavery. The light pink being the last places to give up slavery that were forced to. And then Kentucky and Maryland actually were the very last places to outlaw slavery because they waited for the amendments that came after the Civil War before they actually ended slavery. So what are the 3 regions shown on this map? Which region ended slavery first? Was it the North, South, or West? The map that we are looking at now shows information from the census in 1840. A census is where people report what kind of work they do, as well as how many people are in their household and all that. But what we're using here is not the numbers of people total. This is what kind of work is done. So we still have the North, primarily the Northeast, and then we have the South. The West, you'll notice, is black here, and that's because they didn't take a census in places that were not yet states. And so everything that was a territory, we don't have census data on from 1840. But from the states that we do know, so the North and the South, red is where you see factories, and blue is where you see predominantly farming. So this is actually a heat map that is about how many people are basically engaged in jobs that relate to factories. So either making things in factories or trading goods that are from factories. So the blue areas where you see very little of that is where you're going to find a lot of farmland and people focused on farming. So thinking about those regions, we have the North and the South. Which region has more factories? Which region depends almost entirely on farming in 1840? So now let's take a look at the two maps together. So we have more factories in the North, more farms in the South. And remember, the blue gave up slavery first. The red and warm colors gave it up later, last. So where did slavery end sooner? Was it in regions that had more factories or more farms? These maps just set the groundwork, kind of the foundation for what we're going to be learning about with manifest destiny and the conflicts that come from this idea of manifest destiny. There's more than one conflict, but one big one turns out to be about slavery. And so this is where we kind of start to see how we lead up to the Civil War. We're going to spend the rest of this semester leading up to and then talking about the Civil War. But these maps start to help explain the differences between the North and the South. Make sure you have answered the questions about the maps in your notes, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.